I knew that I wanted to help people, so I pivoted and I took all the 8 required medical classes, applied, and got into a phenomenal school in DC, Georgetown.
One of the things as surgeons, you see a lot for different reasons. And dealing with cancer,
I went to Tulane for residency here in New Orleans for 5 years. I'm actually their very first breast surgeon at Mary Bird Perkins.
going through this experience, how has that changed your perspective to where it was before as to where it is now?
It only helped everything I do now in my practice taking care of breast cancer patients. I think even before this, I was just naturally innate, always a person that wanted to help people.
Hello, hello, hello. This is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. And again, today, as always, what we always bring is another phenomenal guest. Listen, we travel all the way to New Orleans. We found this phenomenal surgeon. She is fresh out. She's been 2 years practicing. And sometimes we believe that everyone in the medical field has like this super cape, this superpower, and that we don't feel anything. But today's episode is a little bit about how even those in the medical field are affected by what happens in the cancer community. And so we wanted to make sure I brought this next person in. She is phenomenal. She's a fantastic human being. And I think that you guys are going to really resonate with her story. But not only is resonating with her story, she's coming from whether the North Shore part of New
New
Orleans,
Orleans of
right?
Louisiana.
Louisiana. And we're talking about Mary Bird Perkins Cancer Center. Listen, so I want you guys to make sure you pay extra and close attention because she's going to be dropping gems today. Please give me a round of applause as we bring in Vera Hendrix. Dr. Vera Hendrix, welcome to All Talk Oncology.
Thank you.
Hey, for sure. Well, how are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so excited, and we're going to talk a lot about a lot of great stuff, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, one of the things as surgeons, you see a lot, right? I mean, you're working on a lot of different individuals for different reasons. And
Right.
dealing with cancer, I mean, how did you land in one that you wanted to be a surgeon and kind of get into this field?
That's a great question. So I actually did not do anything related to medicine in undergrad and college. I thought I wanted to do international law or work for a NGO. My mom is from Ukraine, my dad's from Taiwan. They both came here in the late 70s my dad as an international student, my mom as a refugee. And so I always just envisioned that that's what I would do. And then I knew that I wanted to help people. And of course, my senior year of college, I decided that the most universal way to do that was through medicine, not necessarily for me, at least international law or NGO. So I pivoted, and I took all the 8 required medical classes, applied, and got into a phenomenal school in DC, Georgetown, Hoya Saxa for all the Georgetown listeners. And I had a great experience there. And then I went to Tulane for residency here in New Orleans for 5 years, and that was a wonderful experience. And I did fellowship in California at USC, so Trojans. And at that point, my parents were like, "Could you go any farther from us in New York?" And I was like, "Yes, I guess I could go to like, across the country, across the sea or something." And then I came back to New Orleans to practice with my first job.
I love it. Look at you.
Yeah.
I mean, you just all over the place, just collecting,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. I like to put my footprint in a lot of different states within the US, I guess.
Well, you've selected some phenomenal schools to do it. So, I mean, kudos to you on that. And thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, so here you are now, a surgeon. You're doing practice there in Louisiana
Yes.
now, huh?
Yes, and I'm actually their very first breast surgeon at Mary Bird Perkins. They started as a group of radiation oncologists and medical oncologists, and they realized that they wanted to build a multidisciplinary center here for breast cancer care. And I was, the missing piece of the puzzle. And so they hired me, and we've been building a program here. We have a radiologist, we have pathologists, so we have a very exceptional multidisciplinary team, which I'm fortunate to be able to work with and take care of patients. So that's wonderful.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about being at the right place at the right time, right?
Yes, exactly. I could not have asked for a better, employer and organization to work with. They're genuinely wonderful people from the top of the hierarchy down, so I'm just so privileged and honored to work with them.
I love it. I love it. Now,
Yeah.
what's interesting here is we had talked before, and listeners, you also had married a surgeon, right?
Yes, so my husband, Doctor Ty Tuggle, he was a plastic surgeon, and he actually did his medical school and residency at Yale in Connecticut, in New Haven, so he was there for 10 years, no big deal, and then he did a hand surgery fellowship at the number 1, hand surgery institute, Curtis National Hand Center in Baltimore, and then he came to New Orleans in 2018 for his first job as a junior attending, and he was building a replantation revascularization program here at University Medical Center, also doing like brachial plexus and pediatric congenital hand um, surgeries as well. And so that's how we met in New Orleans in the hospital setting. Very kind of different paths, but we came together.
I love it. One
Yeah.
rock star to the other, basically.
I guess you could say, I guess, like, yeah, power couple, who knows?
Sure, for sure. It's interesting, right? Because you and I, we're in this medical field and we're
Right.
always servicing other
Yes.
individuals, right? And it's never about us getting sick or us. We never think about that. We're always focused on the patient. But your story is a little different, right? I mean,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about your husband because it sounds like he had came down and was diagnosed with cancer, correct?
Yes. So I will say doctors are the worst patients.
Mhm.
Everybody knows that. Or I guess medical professionals are the worst patients because we put so much effort and every energy into taking care of other people that a lot of times we don't take care of ourselves necessarily. Not to say that's what happened with my husband, because he was like athlete, a runner, super healthy, ate healthy, in great overall health. So not to say that that's what he did, but in general, they say, are the worst patients. But yeah, so he was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is a form of brain cancer, when he was 38 years old, and he had just started training. So most all of us train for, I don't know, I'd say on average 14 years, 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, anywhere from 3 to 7 years of residency, and then anywhere from 1 to 3 years of fellowship. So most of us are all in our early mid 30s by the time we finish training and start practicing and working. So he had just finished in 2018, and then 2 years in 2020, he was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is a very rare form of brain cancer. And it in and of itself is a rare cancer. Less than 5% of the population supposedly has it. And usually the average age is around 62. So he was much, much younger than the average population. And it kind of just started with headaches. And he's like, I'm young, healthy, on call, operating. Because as a plastic surgeon, he did like 8 hour, 12-hour cases, flap surgeries. So he just thought it was the stress of work and all of that. And it turned out that it was a tumor. So in his left frontal lobe, luckily, he had a great surgeon. He had a great surgery. He had what they call a gross total resection, which is where they get all the tumor out. And then they usually do 6 weeks standard of chemo radiation after that. And during the short period of time after recovery from surgery before starting that 6 week standard chemo radiation, we got into a clinical trial at Duke and it was an immunotherapy trial. So it all happened very fast. From diagnosis to surgery, it was 1 or 2 days, and then recovery for a couple of weeks, and then starting the 6 week chemo radiation. And in the midst of that, flying to North Carolina to Duke to harvest his immune cells to prime against the cancer. And then after that 6 week standard care, we went to Duke and he started the clinical trial and he went there and he was doing great actually for almost 2 years before he had a recurrence. But to your question and to your point, it was a very different thing to go from two doctors, two surgeons, to patient and a caregiver.
For sure. Let me ask, I mean, because not only as a professional, you're taking a lot on, we're servicing patients, we're taking a lot on our skills, our jobs, trying to manage a marriage. So, how long were you guys together prior to being diagnosed?
Like less than a year, even probably.
Yeah. So it's like when right when you're starting to get to know each other and,
Yes.
right, it's that chemistry is going and then
Yes.
something like this happens, right?
Yeah.
Right. So was that difficult for you to transform from being in this loving relationship, right? Getting to know the butterflies, as we all know, right? When
Right.
you're meeting someone to now, oh my God, I need to put on this doctor hat or the supportive caregiver hat. How was that transition?
It was, I think, obviously difficult, but also easy because we were both physicians. I think it was always like the honeymoon phase. And so it was obviously a shock to everything and every kind of plan, future plan and present plan when that diagnosis was said or came about, because you learn in medical school that glioblastoma is a death sentence. Literally, you learn, like, one sentence about it. It's kind of like pancreatic cancer. It's a terminal diagnosis. There's no cure, there's no known cause, and so Ty was very realistic, and he was a researcher. He believed in evidence-based medicine, as most all physicians do, but to the supreme extent, and I was more of, like, an idealist and, like, very super hopeful, and so I think that balance was good, but I will say it was definitely a shock to the system. I think it made it easier for us because we were both physicians and doctors to navigate what it was and navigate the system and read through clinical trials and contact the right people and make connections to the right major brain cancer centers. So that was super helpful. But yeah, the transition was hard because you have to talk about a lot of serious things very quickly, especially in maybe a newer relationship. And we had already, from the very beginning, had already talked about family and marriage, like, very quickly because we're so in love and already knew that aspect, so it wasn't huge in that regard. I think for him, it was hard to think about that after that diagnosis, knowing that maybe he wouldn't be here or be here for a long time to be able to see that come to fruition. So I think that idea, I know, was a difficult decision for him, but we had talked about family before. I've always wanted a family, so it was very important to me, and I think because of that, it was also very important to him, and so he kind of took a step back with what he felt in his heart in order to make me happy, I guess, in terms of that aspect of it.
Sounds like an amazing man, right? I mean, you think about going through something like this and still being able to, because of love, right? And love, it moves you to do things that are phenomenal, really.
Right,
And you think about being able to put you in a place where, yeah, he's going to take care of you, no matter what is going on with him. And
right.
it says a lot about his character. Thank you for shedding that light onto us as well, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he was just a pure genius and so talented and just like everything you could ever hope for in a husband, in a father. I just honestly think the world of him. And I mean, I can't really it's hard for me to put into words, but he was basically, if you think of the perfect person, that was.
I love it. So you were talking about this is the process. First year this is happening. You and him both being physicians, doing the research. He goes in, he gets the surgery, gets things going. And then on top of that, I want the listeners to make sure that you got the timeline. This is in 2020. So
20 during COVID, yeah.
we're in COVID. This is going on during COVID. So not only is this the stress of dealing with COVID, now you add this element on top of it. So do you feel that pressure at the time?
Definitely, and this happened in December of 2020, so we had just made it past the quarantine period, and things were a little bit starting to light up, but he couldn't have more than one family member in his post-op room or in the pre-op or even to visit him, and I think we kind of bent the rules a little bit because I had a physician badge and I happened to we both happened to have privileges at that hospital, so we had maybe a couple of more family members at one time than others, but still it was the residual of major health threat, and so people were still cautious. I know a lot of people you'll see on the GBM Facebook groups say, "Oh, the COVID vaccine caused the GBM or this or that," but Ty was diagnosed before he ever got the COVID vaccine. That actually came about afterwards when we talked to the neuro-oncologist about getting it with a compromised immune system and whatnot. And so he got it after the fact, and he never had COVID actually that he knew of prior to it. So it's just interesting because I'll see a lot of that on social media and in the news, and people swear that COVID caused their cancer, different things. And at least for us, that wasn't the case. And yeah, but it was a trying time and it was difficult. And I think we were lucky that it happened after kind of March of 2020 when everybody was quarantining and all of that. I know that when we went over to Duke, everybody was still wearing masks here and there. And so it was a little bit of a different atmosphere than I think it could have been, but still we got amazing care. Everything was able to happen at the right time in the right sequence. So we're lucky and fortunate in that regard.
So as you get through this, I mean, it seems like Dr. Hendrick had his surgery.
Tuggle.
Dr. Toggle?
Yes, yeah.
So sorry.
So I'm Hendrix Tuggle now, but yeah, his
Okay.
last name is Tuggle and my
Oh,
maiden name's Hendrix.
got it. So seems like Dr. Toggle had his surgery. Was it in December 2020?
20 December of 2020, yes.
Okay. So you go through this surgery. He comes out, man, things are looking good. How is life after surgery at that point now?
So we were very lucky in that he had no deficits. Anytime you go in for surgery, especially brain cancer surgery, you worry that you're going to have motor deficits or speech impediments or anything like that. He had no deficits. He healed great. We went into the clinical trial at Duke. He did wonderful. He was back to operating while he was getting chemo radiation. And basically, you wouldn't know that he had brain cancer. And I was in fellowship 6 months after that. I had to move to California for fellowship. So that was really difficult. But because he was doing so great, we both felt comfortable with everything that was happening. And he had such a great support system with his family who was down here. And then after that, we had, towards the end of my fellowship, I was pregnant. And then a month later, he got diagnosed with a recurrence. Unfortunately, the recurrence was an inoperable location. And so they couldn't do a biopsy. They couldn't get new tissue to see how the brain cancer mutated and maybe do another clinical trial or whatnot. And so that was really difficult going from such a happy moment a month prior to a very concerning time the next month. So it was a very imbalanced period, I'd say. But even when he had the recurrence, and even though it was an unfavorable location to recur, and most GBMs recur in 80% of the time in the same location, which would have been nice because he could have had surgery again. So on top of a rare cancer, he had a rare recurrence that was distant and further from the original location, and we couldn't really do any interventions. But even in that point, I was, I guess, in a happy denial phase, I guess, because I thought he's so young, he's 39, he'll get through this. And Duke really reassured us. They were like, we have patients on Avastin for years and they go back to work. It was very much, he'll get SRS, which you probably know about, stereotactic radiosurgery, where you get high dose radiation to that kind of recurrence area in five couple of sessions. And so I was very hopeful, and it went from, we tried one kind of chemo pill, it didn't work. Then we tried another one, it didn't really work. He kind of was getting worse. And throughout the whole time until he went into home hospice, I was like researching on clinicaltrials.gov. I was 6 months pregnant. I was studying for boards, starting a new job. And that was the most difficult part, was trying to, and he was on FMLA. And then once the FMLA runs out, the insurance is really a big thing because then the patient doesn't have the employer cover the cost of the insurance and you have to pay out of pocket like thousands of dollars. And so luckily I was working and I put him on my insurance. And that was a difficult portion too, because obviously as a caregiver, you want to be at home with the person you love and you want to spend as much time with them as possible because you have no idea what's going to happen the next day if there's a turn for the worse. And so I couldn't do that because now we were both on my insurance and I was pregnant and I was going to my OB-GYN visits and ultrasound visits and all the things. And so I had to work in order to maintain insurance in order for us to continue to get health coverage. But in reality, all I wanted to do was be at home with him and stay with him 24/7 as much as I could.
Very, I mean, I don't think people really understand the level of stress that we have as healthcare professionals. but then you want to add this element on top of it. You being pregnant, you being a surgeon, you trying to research the things for your husband, you wanting to be there for him, going having a fellowship, being out of the state. I mean, it's a lot weighing down. How did you manage the balance of those feelings? Whether you did or didn't, but how did you try to regulate? Because I think people listening in, sometimes they feel that out of control too. You know what I mean?
Right.
How did you do that?
I think for me, I've just always been such an optimistic person. And I think being a surgeon, we're so used to having tangible effects. Somebody has appendicitis, we take out their appendix and they're better the next day. Or they have their gallbladder and we take out their gallbladder. And so it's a very immediate, real effect. And I think that helped me because I was, like I said, a happy in denial phase where I was like, well, we're doctors, we're going to cure this, we're going to take care of this. There's no way that this young, handsome, talented genius is going to pass away from this. And so I think I was just in denial and optimistic. And I took a little bit of my background in medicine and being a surgeon. And I was like, we're just going to fix this. And that's the only option. There's no other option in my mind. And I
Yeah.
will say when we first met our neuro-oncologist, shout out to Dr. Henry Friedman, who is very well known in the GBM world. He used to be a pediatric neuro-oncologist, so he dealt with pediatric brain cancer. And I just can't even imagine that. Just adult brain cancer is hard enough, but having a child go through it is so hard. So I think he transitioned from pediatric brain cancers to adult brain cancers. But he said, you never want to go to a doctor who has lost hope, especially in a situation where you have a terminal diagnosis and there's already very, very little hope and a poor prognosis. So when we went in there, he was like, telling us all these success stories. He was super hopeful and it was just a light at the end of the tunnel and regardless of what he knew and his own experience, his persona and his demeanor was just so uplifting that I think that's what you need to have and that's what I have with my patients and that's what I had with Ty regardless of what the outcome was. I was never going to stop trying and I was never going to give in.
I love it. Vera, we need more and more professionals to adopt that mindset. It's a mindset, it's a way of thinking. And we, on the other side, as patients, we feed off of that.
Right.
We thrive off of that. Regardless of the outcome, when that person is standing in front of us and they're delivering news, it has a huge impact on us. To be able to have that hope, I'm never going to forget that. Never give up hope. If you have a doctor who has
No.
given up on hope, that's not the physician for you. I mean, it's powerful what you just said, Vera.
And you just have to get a second and third opinion if that's your encounter. Because we had seen somebody here and they were very bland, very blunt. And they're like, you're going to die in 6 months if you don't do this treatment. And they didn't have any clinical trials. And so I think, especially with something like GBM, you need to have a plan A, you need to have a plan B, and you need to have know all your options. And I mean, we were lucky in that we had that background, but I can only imagine somebody who doesn't have a medical background navigating through all of that because it was already hard for us on top of everything. And so, I mean, kudos and to people that kind of navigate the whole system without having any medical family or help or background. It's really difficult and hard, almost impossible.
Yeah. I'm living that with you right now. It's a phenomenal to listen to him and he's fighting. So you go through this, you go through the radiation a second time. Did I hear you do something
Yes.
cyber Did we do?
Yeah, exactly. Gamma knife, stereotactic radiosurgery at Duke. It was like 5 sessions, very high dose focused.
So as a couple, there's a lot of people, they don't understand this. Sometimes you hear the listener say, when my husband or my wife had cancer, it's as if I had cancer. And so how did you navigate going through that second round and going through that whole procedure? And then how did you come up with, okay, what's our game plan?
So I was like, I've always been very type A. I guess that's how I got to where I am. But I was researching for hours. I got second opinions from MD Anderson, MSK, Germany. There's a big program there called CGAT that does immunotherapy clinical trials, not covered by insurance, all out of pocket, like $100,000. We consulted with them, UCSF, UCLA, like all different providers, and I was a little bit, I guess, clever in that because I was a doctor, I was able to reach out and find phone numbers for other neuro-oncologists, neurosurgeons at these big institutions, and I think they thought that I was Ty's neuro-oncologist when I said, "It's Dr. Hendrix calling," and so I used that to my benefit and favor, so I was very quickly able to get in touch with people and get answers faster because in GBM, the doubling time is very fast, and so days matter. It's not something like breast cancer, which I deal with, that has a great prognosis. We always tell patients breast cancer is not what's gonna kill you. We have so many advancements in medical oncology, radiation oncology, breast surgical techniques, equipment, national research funding. It's the most common cancer in women, so people pay a lot of attention to it. Whereas something like GBM that affects less than 5% of the population, people don't wanna put federal funding towards research for it because they're like, It's not gonna be generalizable to a large patient population," unfortunately, and I think, and I know we've talked about this before, I think these really rare, deadly cancers need to have almost as much funding as a major cancer because they're so deadly, even though they don't affect 12% of the population, it's less than 5%. That's important, and I think GBM's had recognition in that with Beau Biden passing away at 47, President Biden's son, from GBM. He was a very prominent attorney. Kennedy, McCain, there's a lot of very famous people that had GBM, and I think that was unfortunate, but also a blessing in that there was more political recognition of it, public awareness, people are talking about it more, and so I think that's really important. But to your point, kind of how I was going through everything, I was just keeping that same mindset, and I was able to use my background in medicine to be able to get us things maybe faster and more streamlined approach, and in the end, it might have been the same response, but we didn't have to wait as long. I will tell you as a caregiver, it is unbelievable how much of a insurmountable mountain that you have to face in order to get your loved one decent care, from figuring out how to use clinicaltrials.gov, from sending and collecting all your imaging CDs to send to MD Anderson, and then them getting it, them waiting several weeks to get it, only to tell you, "We don't have a clinical trial for you." It has to be more streamlined, it has to be faster. Patients need to have a universal platform, and I think they have this nowadays, where you put all your imaging, all your radiology reports, all your consult notes that you have to send to 100 different places in one place and give access to those places to see them, because that wasn't the case when we were going through it. I had to go to the radiologist and physically get a burn CD, upload it. Who has a CD uploader on their laptop anymore? No one. Upload it to a shared drive, make sure that the other institution got it, then on top of that, upload all these notes, get medical releases, medical records. It's unbelievable, and we were really lucky in that we knew how to do that, and we knew, and we were fairly young. Not that I'm saying older people don't know how to use electronics, but it was hard, and I think maybe younger people are more tech savvy because we grew up with it, but it was, like, impossible, like, truly and utterly impossible.
To add that on top of everything else, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and then just hearing one after another institution saying, "Oh, we don't have a clinical trial for him," or, "He doesn't meet criteria," or this or that. It was to even get into a clinical trial, you have to be the absolute perfect patient. You can't have had any other clinical trial that involved what they were doing. You can't be on Avastin. You have to have this lab number. It's just so specific. And my biggest thing through all of it was there's something called Right to Try and the Moonshot program and expanded access. And I tried to actually implement those for Thai when several doors were closing and there was all these little glimmers of hope. And I was like, why can't we do these things? I reached out to medical equipment companies. One was called Ultrasound Sonodynamic Therapy, and all of their websites said, oh, we have expanded access. Oh, this and that. We applied for it. In reality, they don't. They don't let the patients try. They say they have this for deadly cancers, people that are on hospice or at the end of the line for treatment options. And they don't. They're like, "Oh, well, we're regulated by the FDA." When I talked to the FDA, because I talked to them, because I was able to, they were like, "No, we approve 99.99% of these. It's the manufacturers of the drug or of the biotech equipment that are the ones who have the final say." And so it's like a catch-22. These companies are like, "Oh, we're so scared of the FDA if something goes wrong," and then they shut down our trial. And the FDA is saying, "No, we let them do it." And I thought that was the most heartless aspect of it all. We were very open to signing NDAs. We will do anything. We have no other options. You need to let us try this. And it was like, no. I had written so many like pleading statements and letters to these companies. I was 6 months pregnant. My husband is 39, or he just turned 40. He is an Ivy League trained plastic surgeon. He does so much for our community, and you cannot let us even try your experimental drug or your experimental technology to save his life. That was the point that I was at in December of 2022. I was flabbergasted that this was real life and this is what patients, caregivers, and their families go through on a daily basis. It was unacceptable,
My goodness. Listen,
and nobody cares.
I hope you hear Dr. Hendricks here. Sometimes you believe, oh, the people in the medical field that they're in cahoots with this and they're
In
in
pharma companies and
right. I mean, listen. I hope you're listening to this. We are right there with you, and this is why we do these interviews like this so that you can be empowered and
and make change.
you
I
can
think
feel that.
public awareness is the only way to go now with social media, because clearly going to the FDA, going to these companies, and nothing will happen. But I think if that we publicly should shame these companies, but I think if there's more public awareness and people actually knew what really happened, they would be appalled. And in a day, things would change.
This is where it starts, right? I mean, we make sure that we bring awareness. And my goodness, for you to have all the way up until this point, 2022, have done everything you can. How did you and your husband say, you know what, this is how we're going to get our affairs in order? This is how we're doing this, and make decisions like that?
That's a great question because I didn't do any of that, because up even until like the last day, I was like, oh, there's maybe a miracle. I'm still gonna research all this. I'm still gonna figure this all out. So I think luckily we had the support of family, and his dad was a lawyer. He just retired, but his dad was able to help us navigate everything, put our names on all the joint accounts, transfer things prior to everything. And so I was just kind of signing things, and I was not really the person behind doing all that. But I think that is so important. I think because I just could not even envision and imagine that he would pass away. I couldn't even do any of those things. And I don't think I would have changed anything because I was very gung ho about the whole thing until the end. I was like, there is nothing that we're not going to turn over in order to save my husband's life. Nothing. So I was very much all about that. But we had a lot of people surrounding us that kind of figured out the other logistical things. And I know through meeting other young widows and other families, GBM or other cancers, a lot of them are very practical, realistic in the last couple of months, or if they're on home hospice or in the hospital, and they talk about all that stuff. Like, what are all the passwords to all the different subscriptions? What credit cards are paying for these on auto pay, bank account information, retirement stuff? There's so much you have to do ahead of time that I was privileged that I didn't have to do necessarily because other people were helping us. But I think a lot of couples do that, and having a will. And I got a will. Most people don't have wills until they have kids, or they don't have life insurance until they have kids. But all of that stuff I did earlier than the average person does because of Ty. And I always tell other people to do, because you never know. Tomorrow you could go out and die in a car accident, and you could die before this other person who has a 6 month prognosis with a terminal cancer. So I think about all that, and I think it's really important for young people to look at and think about. And I think because there's more younger people with cancer, they are doing that and getting their affairs in order. So I think that's a good thing. It's kind of like a prenup. You don't know what's going to happen, but you have this in place in case something does happen. Same thing for a living will, same thing for disability insurance, car insurance, anything.
Yes. Listen, I love your passion. When I first met with you, when we start talking about this, your passion came through and I love it. And I hope the listeners see this. A lot of times you always see the spouse or the significant other taking that role, and you can see the reason why. There, when there's love behind it, you want to do whatever it takes to see that person healthy again.
Right.
So, Vera, let me ask you, going through this experience like this, I'm sorry you had to go through this experience, but going through an experience like this, how has that changed your perspective to where it was before as it to where it is now?
That's a great question. I'd say it only helped everything I do now in my practice taking care of breast cancer patients. I think even before this, I was just naturally innate, always a person that wanted to help people, that I've had hundreds of hours of volunteering since I was young, doing community service. I think it's just what we should do as human beings for each other. And so I think this just promoted that, but I had a different perspective.
And so, what I was asking is, how has this changed your perspective with not only
Yes.
your approach with your patients, but just in general in life and how you see things?
So I think every patient I have that comes to see me, I think of them as a family member. I do everything that I possibly can to make sure that they get the best care. I'm sure I did that before, but it's just a little bit different of a perspective. And with some patients, I'll share about Ty and about his brain cancer diagnosis, depending on what happens. I know right after he passed away, I had a patient and she was like 98 years old, and I was showing her pictures of the baby, and I just couldn't break it to her because I just did and she was like, "Oh, what about your husband? What does he do?" And then I just went on and I was like, "He's a plastic surgeon." I just couldn't break it to her because she was just so sweet. But a lot of other patients, I will tell them the story, especially, I had one patient actually, she had brain cancer when she was younger, and then she had breast cancer, and so I think just sharing your own personal background and history and why you do the things the way you do is very important. I think it's not always helpful in every situation because you don't wanna make it about yourself and you wanna make it about the patient, but I think patients really do value, that personal connection with their provider, with their doctor. They wanna know that we're humans too, that we're all doing the best that we can every day and that it's hard. I think it just added more to what I was already doing, and in everything that I do, I think about, like, what would Ty do? Wanna make him proud and happy, and I remember all the struggles and difficulties that we went through when we were facing a cancer diagnosis, and so I wanna make that as easy as possible for the patient, and insurance doesn't always let us do that, but there's other avenues that we take in order to get what we need for our patient, whatever's in their best interest, which is not always in combination with what their insurance or what pharma companies think they need, so that's a little hurdle, but not one that we can't handle.
And I love it because your husband, Ty, he lives on. We talked about you being pregnant at that time and you gave birth after his passing, correct?
Yes, I he passed when I was 6 months pregnant, December 22, and then Mila was born March of 2023, so I had a 3-month window between literal life and death, so it was a very strange period. I had 2 grief counselors, I read every grief book, I listened to all the grief podcasts, I talked to anybody and everybody I could. I was like everything else, I was very type A with the grieving process, and then when my daughter was born, everything just became about her and learning how to be a mom and take care of her and creating that special bond. And I only had 6 weeks and I had to go back to work. I think doctors have the worst maternity leave. I will announce that publicly. Doctors have probably the worst maternity leave. So yeah, that was hard because Ty wasn't there. Even if he was here, he would have been working too as a surgeon. So it was nice that my family and his family were able to be around her and be supportive because I know not everybody has that privilege and is lucky enough to have that. So I was very lucky in that regard. My dad is still here taking care of my 2.5-year-old now. And I feel it allows me to do the best that I can at work because I feel that comfort in that she's with a family member versus maybe like a stranger or, I don't know. I don't wanna get into that. That's a whole different political realm of, of daycare and things and
What a
school.
privilege. What a
Yes.
privilege. Privilege to have our parents around and be able to be surrounded by our family.
Yes.
But, I wanna talk to you a little bit because, recently, they've honored your husband, right? I mean, something just happened where they honored him and being the amazing surgeon and human being that he is, right?
Yes, it's been almost 3 years in the making, and even when he was sick, we were trying to figure out a way, something that he would want later down the line to continue his legacy, but yeah, we just had the inaugural Ty Tuggle annual lectureship in hand surgery through LSU Foundation here in New Orleans. It was beautiful and everything I envisioned for Ty and for his passion for hand surgery and plastic surgery. We had one of his mentors from Curtis, Dr. James Higgins, come be the visiting professor, and he was phenomenal. And the whole first half of his presentation was just stories about Ty as a trainee and Ty starting his practice and just how brilliant he was and how amazing he was and how much he was able to give to the community in such a short period of time. And so it was just very special and it's going to continue every year. And if you go to my MD Instagram, there's a link if you want to donate and support. So every May is Brain Cancer Awareness Month, and it's also my birthday. So I raise funds for brain cancer through that. And then Ty's birthday is in October. And so every October for his birthday, I ask people to donate to his hand lectureship because he said, when I first met him, he said, there are two things that I love the most in life. One was his family, the Tuggle family, which they're just above and beyond. So no explanation needed. And the second one was his profession. He loved taking care of people and their hands. And it was just so interesting. Most plastic surgeons go into cosmetics. They cash pay, facelifts, cosmetic procedures, money, money, money. But he was a plastic surgeon that went into hand. And he definitely told me from the very first start, he did not go into it for money because they do not get compensated like a typical cosmetic plastic surgeon. But he went into it because he wanted to take care of people that use their hands for their living. A lot of his patients were construction workers or people that worked in the deli that sliced their fingers with the meat cutter or whatnot. And so that was what he loved doing. And he just thought we do everything with our hands. And I always thought, well, I treat cancer, I treat breast cancer. That's more important. Maybe a heart surgeon or a brain surgeon because you can't function without your brain or your heart pumping. And to him, it was hands. He's like, you can't do anything with your hands. You can't drive, you can't work, you can't take care of yourself, like hygiene and all that stuff. And so that was his cancer, people with their hands. So I love that we can honor him. I love that we can continue his legacy. And I think a big misconception with families or maybe young widows or that you don't want to talk about it, that to resurrect those feelings is going to be too hard. But every chance that I get to talk about Ty is amazing to me. Like I want to talk about him all the time. And so when I've talked to like a handful of people that somebody in their family's been diagnosed with GBM and people ask, "Is it okay if I connect you? You probably don't want to talk about it," and like all that stuff. I'm like, "No, I absolutely want to talk about it. I absolutely want to raise awareness about GBM and tell them our story and see how we can be helpful to them." So it's the opposite, I guess, of what most people would think. I want to talk about him all the time. I want to talk about GBM. I want to talk about breast cancer.
I
I
love
wanna
it.
talk about all the good things and the bad things that go along with all of that.
Well, that's one of the beautiful things about you and your personality. You are not afraid to tackle the difficult conversations, and I love that about you. Yeah,
Thank you.
100%. What I do wanna ask you, because you've given us a lot today, you've dropped some gems. Anyone listening in, so they can resonate with this. But I wanna ask you, what was one of the most memorable times you had with your husband?
Gosh, there are so many, I just remember a lot of his, I guess you could say, Tuggleisms, and one thing when we first met, he said, "I have a 5-year plan and I have a 10-year plan," and I think this was, like, our first, second, or third date. It was very early on, I said, "Wow," and he said, "I wanna be an associate professor, I wanna be a program director of plastic surgery, I wanna be a chair of surgery one day." And I was like, this person is only a couple of years older than me, and he has all these huge aspirations, super structured, knows what he wants. And I was just absolutely in awe of him. I was like, you are just amazing. You have such an amazing vision. And that has always driven me after I finished training and went into practice. Like, just kind of going after the next thing, making sure you're doing the best you can in this one life we have to live for whatever amount of time we have. And so I'll never forget that. And the other Tuggleism he said, and he used to always say, the purpose of life is in the voluntary adoption of responsibility. And I was like, that is just like so profound. And to him, that was family, having children, taking care of your children, and profession, do hand surgery, taking care of patients, being the best you can as their provider. Can you just, even for a second, stop and think about what it means to be a patient and to choose a provider, especially a surgeon, to, like, literally put your body and your life in their hands in the operating room? That's, like, amazing, wow. Like, they trust you of all these other hundreds of people that they could choose to take care of them, and so, you have to meet them where they're at, you have to have a connection with them, they have to have a gut reaction that you're their surgeon, like, all of that has to fall into place for any operation to happen or to cure any cancer.
Amazing. And listening to how you guys dated less than a year before all this happened. At what moment, if you can recall, I want to give the people that. I want to let them know that love is always at whatever level you're at. What was it about your husband that you said at that moment, I love that guy?
Gosh, I think it was the very beginning. I think it was obviously the first date. It was like during right around the COVID year. And I think we just had the same values. We had the same perspectives. We had the same goals. So prior to him, I'd never dated anybody that was in medicine. And I see people when I was in training in medical school residency, and half the people dated people outside of medicine, and half the people dated their spouse or significant other was in medicine like them. And so I always wondered, is it better one way or the other? And I can say 100% wholeheartedly, for me, it was better to date somebody else in medicine. I mean, we just understood everything that we were going through, call, having to miss a birthday or having to miss something because we were taking care of somebody else, a patient, or in surgery, or there was a complication, which there's never a complication. But yeah, so I think understanding that, and then I think just having those same life goals, same values. I don't want to say it's almost like an arranged marriage, but reasons why arranged marriages work, I think, is because they have those same values. But I think for us, because we just loved each other so much and we had those values, it was just magical. It's hard to put into words. And so it's interesting when somebody point blanks asks you that, you're like, how can I put that into one little tight fitting box? But I think it's just like when you know, and they have all those sayings, love at first sight, or like a gut reaction. And it was all those things and more.
I love it.
Sorry, I'm looking at our picture, so that's why I'm keep looking over to the side because I have a picture of us.
Oh, look at that
Um,
guy. He's a
yeah, on
handsome guy. Look at this.
yeah, I know he's like a people used to think he looked like Leonardo DiCaprio, but
Ah.
I think this was one of our first dates. And I think there's a picture of the baby on the bottom too, but it's getting blurred out. But yeah,
Ah,
so that's why I keep looking over to the side
love that.
because I'm thinking of that
I love
time
that. I
when
love
we
that.
first met.
You know what? Your heart is gold. I love that about you. And I
Thank you.
appreciate you sharing that personal experience with us and getting on here and helping us to see people in the medical field, whether you're a surgeon, whatever it may be, we have feelings too. And you
Right.
opened up and you've given us so many gems. I want to tell you how much I appreciate that. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you, what is one thing that you want the listeners to walk away with and knowing from this interview?
I would say if somebody else can do it, you can do it. So I've said that throughout life when things are hard, whether I was pulling all-nighters in college for final exams, or I was in medical school memorizing the Krebs cycle, which is really hard if you go to medical school, to residency training and being on call for 80 hours a week or 100 hours. I think I always said to myself, if somebody else can do it, there's no reason you can't. And when you are getting called for that consult at 3 in the morning and you've been awake for 40 hours, you have to go down to that ER and you have to think, this is my brother, this is my sister, this is my mother, this is my father, this is my husband. wife, etc., you have to think this is somebody's family member and put yourself in their shoes and how do you want to be treated. So I think those are the two main things. And then just get out there and vote. Take charge of what you want to see the change be in the world. Talk about it. Even if you think only one other person is listening, that one other person may know 50 million people. So I always think of the book The Petit Prince because I took French for 6 years and we used to read that book in French, but in the end, he had all these aspirations, and in the end, he the whole point is that he cultivated his own garden. He realized that the universe is so much bigger than our one person, and you have to start with yourself in order to change other people, and in some aspects, definitely believe in that. I think you have to start small in order to reach a larger group and have something on a global scale. But I always want to say never give up hope, never stop being optimistic because you never know who you'll meet in life and who and how that'll impact something else like a domino effect.
Thank you, Dr. Hendricks. You have definitely surpassed any expectation I thought on this interview. It's amazing. It was a
Thank
privilege
you.
to have you on here. And listen, if you guys need a surgeon and you're out down by Louisiana, you want someone with a heartfelt appreciation who can put themselves in your shoes, Dr. Hendricks is your person. You want to do.
Thank you so much for having me. Everybody subscribe to All Talk Oncology. It's been an honor and a privilege. I can't say that enough. And just for giving me this platform to tell my story and to talk about things that are very important to me and I hope resonate with some of your listeners and hopefully the public in general.
Sure. As
Thank
I
you.
always tell you, absolutely. And as I always tell you guys, you're not alone in this. We're in this together. This is Kenny Perkins, AKA your cancer guy. And until again, I'm out.
So stay connected with us on All Talk Oncology Cancer Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that, right? Wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's Apple, Spotify, make sure you subscribe and continue to spread that word, right? Engage in this because your engagement can help someone stay alive. And this is what we're talking about. So again, make sure you subscribe, hit that subscribe button. Again, this is Kenny Perkins, aka your cancer guy. Until again, I'm out.